This has to be the best thing that has come out of Angela Rayner's housing scandal and subsequent resignation. Labour are going to be scrapping their Islamophobia definition. Angela Rayner was the poster girl of the campaign to have an Islamophobia definition. Here she is holding up a sign saying Labour stands together against Islamophobia. She is the one who announced officially that we are going to be having an Islamophobia definition. She is the one who set up an Islamophobia council to advise on an official definition of Islamophobia. But now she's no longer in the cabinet and she is irrelevant. Her successor, Steve Reed, as the housing minister, he is one of the ministers, amongst others, who have led the charge in criticising this move and ultimately leading to the definition being scrapped. This is huge news and I really, really welcome this. Now let's just take a look at the old definition of Islamophobia. Brace yourselves for this. This is the worst worded definition you will ever read. Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. I'm sorry, but that sounds like a 5-year-old wrote that definition, not some sort of academic or intellect. I'm sorry, but how is it racism? We're talking about a faith here. A faith is not a race. How is it a form of racism? I mean, this makes no sense. And they've said the word Muslimness twice in the definition. I mean, it's just messy. It's absolutely horrendous. And what is really problematic here is that the word in question is Islamophobia, which should be considered an irrational fear of the faith Islam. But Islam is a set of ideas. That's different to Muslims as individuals. Islam is a set of ideas that we should be able to criticize in a free society. I mean, if we had this official definition brought in, and trust me, I'm pretty sure it would have been brought in if Angela Rayner had not had to resign as Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary, we would have had blasphemy laws in this country. So that is the definition that the all-party parliamentary group on British Muslims was proposing, but people have feared it's too broad and could amount to a blasphemy law. Of course, I mean, it quite obviously is, and it's a terrible, terrible, terrible wording. So there is going to be a new definition, not for Islamophobia, but for anti-Muslim hatred instead. And some people, they're really annoyed about this. They're like, oh, you're still doing an Islamophobia law, but you're just changing the name of it. I am fine with there being, if we're going to have a definition for anti-Semitism, we can have a definition for anti-Muslim hatred. We need to see that definition. We need to be able to criticize that definition and make sure it is very, very clear that this is about hatred towards individuals as opposed to any of their beliefs that we are right to criticize. We should be able to criticize that religion. So, for example, going back to the old definition, my big issue with this is it says racism that targets expressions of Muslimness. Wearing a burqa or a niqab or a hijab is probably considered an expression of Muslimness. That would mean, if we had this definition, I think it would mean that if I said I don't think women should have to cover their faces and their hair, I oppose the burqa or the niqab, that I would potentially be imprisoned for it. So we can't have a definition like that, but a very narrow, clear definition of anti-Muslim hatred, where it's clearly hatred towards the individual as opposed to a hatred of their belief system. I don't have an issue with that, but we will see exactly what that definition is. I hope that we'll see it. One of the issues with this whole process is that it's been very secret, and we'll look at Claire Coutinho, the Shadow Education Secretary's comments about the secrecy of this in just a moment. But anyway, we don't know exactly what the new definition is going to say, but a source familiar with a review of the definition has confirmed that neither Islamophobia nor Muslimness appear in the new version. It's understood the new wording has been drafted with an aim of clearly defining hatred towards Muslims while protecting free speech. So that's what we're hearing in the Telegraph. And as I said at the beginning of this video, Steve Reed, who has taken over from Angela Rayner, not as Deputy Prime Minister, but in her housing role. He is apparently the one who has been leading the charge against this Islamophobia definition. He is the one who has been most concerned about it amongst other ministers, and the new definition has apparently been submitted to him, to Steve Reed, to make the final decision. And I'm so glad that it is him rather than Angela Rayner making the final decision on this. He previously told The Telegraph he would reject any wording curbing free expression, saying, quote, "I'm not going to bring in blasphemy laws by the back door." Now let's take a look at what Claire Coutinho, the shadow equalities minister, the Conservative, had to say about this and the scary secrecy of the process and how this Islamophobia law has been devised. But before we do that, if you're enjoying this video and want to see more news updates, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. So let's take a look at Claire Coutinho's comments. So she says, and I think this is quite right, that the whole process has been characterised by secrecy. I completely agree with that. I mean, we've had people asking Labour over and over again, how exactly would you define Islamophobia? And they haven't been able to give us any clear answers, really. It's very difficult to define, but they've kept everything very secret this whole process. I'm glad we're getting a bit of clarity now. But anyway, Claire says, the whole process has been characterised by secrecy. They tried to cook this up behind closed doors with radical activists, some of whom previously said that even talking about the grooming gangs was an example of anti-Muslim racism. They must publish this proposed definition and the responses from the public consultation they were forced into. Anti-Muslim hatred, like any form of hate, has no place in Britain. However, we cannot silence legitimate debate. Yeah, so she has said here that radical activists have been involved in cooking together this definition behind closed doors, and I agree with that. I mean, so one of the individuals who has been involved with this APPG, the all-party parliamentary group on British Muslims that have been putting together this definition, is the man who, for some insane reason, he got given an award for promoting community cohesion when he, in Rotherham, told the Muslim community that if they cooperate with the police with regards to the grooming gangs, so if they give the police any evidence, speak to the police, help them solve the crimes in any way, that they will be boycotted by the Muslim community. The Muslim community will ostracize you and come for you if you dare help the police solve the horrific crimes of young girls being raped. He called it a police boycott, is essentially what it was characterized as. And then he got an award for promoting community cohesion. Civil servants decided that he deserved that, and then he was on. My understanding is he's been part of this all-party parliamentary group helping put together this definition. So quite rightly, I have concerns, and Claire Coutinho has voiced concerns here, about the risk that an Islamophobia definition could stop us from discussing the grooming gangs. We've made huge progress this year on making a huge noise. GB News have done a fantastic job of this, and consequently we now have a national inquiry expected to happen into the grooming gangs. We've worked so hard to make a noise with this story, to give a voice to the victims of this story, for that all to come to an end because of an Islamophobia definition coming out would be pretty appalling. So, good news today, folks. Of course, we wait to see what the new anti-Muslim hatred definition is, but this is definitely a move in the right direction. And let me be clear, this is a huge, huge benefit of Angela Rayner being turfed out. That whole housing scandal that led her to her downfall, the biggest benefit of that is we may actually be free to criticize Islam and to talk about the grooming gangs. Because if she was the one who was signing off on this rather than Steve Reed, we would have an Islamophobia definition, I am sure of it. Anyway, I'm Chloe Dobbs. Thank you very much for watching. That's the latest news. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down below if you haven't already.